Good evening, everyone, and I want to welcome members of the City Council, members of the school board, and the administration to our quarterly meeting of the Education Compact. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. This is our first meeting of the new term for members of the City Council, members of the school board, and also the office of the mayor. Before we get into the agenda, I wanted to say just real quick, first, congratulations to Mr. Cameras, knowing that you're going to be around for another 4 years to fulfill the commitments and promises of Dreams for RPS. The strategic plan for Richmond Public Schools is obviously exciting for the division, exciting for the city, and we look forward to working with you as a partner, as the administration moving forward, as we've done so over the course of the last 3 years. Additionally, as the reason we come together on a quarterly basis, and I have to say this as the first meeting of the Education Compact for this team of individuals, school board, city council. Here's the thing, we recognize the authority the school board has over curriculum, over the aspects of education of our young people, and also what they do to support our educators. But we also know that partnerships are what's necessary for us to move forward as a city, and what's needed to move forward as a school division as well. And so we come to the table tonight and for the future meetings as well on a quarterly basis as partners. We recognize there are bright lines between what we do as the administration, the school board, and the city council, but none of this doesn't happen without partnership. Working collaboratively to ensure that we bring out the best outcomes for each and every child in our school division, no matter what neighborhood they live in. And we all have a role to ensure that our children get the best. And that is exactly the reason why we are here this evening. Tonight, we're going to hear updates from the Office of the Mayor. We will have a review of the upcoming fiscal year 22 budget. We will also talk facilities and capital projects, and we'll hear from our friends on City Council. We'll hear from Richmond Public Schools. We'll hear from our friends on City Council as well, and we'll have a presentation and discussion of the RPS calendar proposal and reopening plan. We will close out with some closing remarks, which will likely be brief, and also next steps, which will also likely be brief as well. We don't believe in keeping you all here for too long, obviously. We would rather be in a room, all under one room, one roof, but right now, with the pandemic still out there, we still have to be as safe as possible, and that's why we are doing this birthday tonight. So let's begin with our updates for this evening. And also, finally, I want to say welcome to everyone who's joining us virtually. Let's begin with our updates for this evening. Update from the Office of the Mayor. I'm going to hand it over to Eva Colin with the Children's and the Office of Children and Family. Eva?
Good evening, everybody. I apologize. I just jumped forward a bunch of slides, but I'll start this evening with a quick update on the Emergency Child Care Initiative. When we last checked in December, we were working to identify a funding source to ensure that we were able to continue offering the facilitated learning centers for children participating in virtual learning through Richmond Public Schools through the remainder of the school year. We were able to leverage the last bit of our CARES Act dollars to fund providers through January. And we are very grateful to Richmond Public Schools for their partnership on this initiative and their decision to fund this through the ESSER funds from the federal relief bill that will allow these childcare sites to continue through the end of the school year. We're partnering closely with Richmond Public Schools to ensure that we are maximizing capacity at our school-based sites and continuing to support our providers that are operating out of nonprofits and churches across the city. Our families and our providers are incredibly grateful. So on behalf of the city, thank you so much to Richmond Public Schools for the decision to use your ESSER funds to support this really important work. I will pause there. Mayor, do you have any additional thoughts on this? Or if not, we can take a couple questions if you want, or we can just move along.
Well, obviously, I'm grateful and thankful for the partnership with RPS, recognizing the gaps that are out there for some of our families, particularly those families who are facing financial hardship at this time. Providing this option for those who need it the most is necessary. I'm glad that we've been able to step up since the beginning of the pandemic and working with partners like YMCA and others, but also those in our faith community as well, and a number of other nonprofits out there, Black Kings and Queens as well, just to name a few, just out there doing exactly what we need to do right now in the middle of the pandemic, and that is help, HELP. So I'm grateful for this partnership once again, and I'm glad we're able to actually re-up and get through this pandemic together. Any questions for Eva?
Happy to chat offline with folks as well. So feel free to reach out.
Seeing no questions from Eva, I'm going to ask that the acting chief administrative officer, Lincoln, give us a view of the FY22 budget. I am going to be giving a presentation on the fiscal year 22 budget this upcoming Friday. Obviously, this is a very, very difficult time for the city of Richmond, as we're seeing a large gap between expenditures and revenues because of the pandemic. We have been tested before, and this will be another test again, but I know working together that we can ensure that we do as much as possible for our children in RPS. And so with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Saunders to give an update on year 22.
Thank you, Mayor.
What was going on here?
I don't know if you guys can.
Child?
This is Story. She is a future Westover Hills Eager Beaver, and my co-presenter this evening.
Make sure you got someone to hand it off to, just in case.
Nope. This is the shameless use of a child to avoid getting asked hard questions. Mayor, as you alluded to, FY22 budget is a very difficult budget for the city. We are going to be just roughly tens of millions below in revenues as to what you presented in your budget in early March of 2021 prior to the impacts of COVID-19. That said, we are, we have been able to see some positive increases in our revenue projections for real estate taxes, while we are seeing significant declines in other areas, particularly those like admission, lodging, and meals that are reliant on, our hospitality industry. That said, just want to speak to and assure for the group that the mayor has been very clear in his direction to myself and to the budget staff that we are going to do everything possible to address the operating budget requests of Richmond Public Schools. It's not going to be easy, but the mayor's been very clear that we're going to do everything we can in that regard. We're still finalizing our numbers and our revenues to get to the final presentation for this coming Friday. Budget team has been working truly around the clock to finalize that presentation and to bring this budget to a close as far as for introduction on this Friday. Be happy to entertain any specific questions, but broadly, I would just kind of let folks know that it's not just tough in those things that we would like to do that are new that funding is available for, but from a city personnel side, while avoiding furloughs or layoffs, the city is going to be down in FTEs in our employee count in this next fiscal year. We have implemented our hiring freeze since last March, and as we have not been able to rehire those who have left the city for a very number of reasons. It does impact city services, but we are doing the best we can to pull together and meet the demands of the citizens of Richmond. Happy to take any questions, Mayor.
Are there any questions for Mr. Saunders?
Or story.
No questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll now move into the facilities and capital projects portion of our updates. First on the list are the Vacant Properties Committee report and update from Trustee Young, School Board Member Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For purpose of context, the School Board City of Richmond created a group, a committee, Vacant Property Committee specifically. The origin pertained to our rezoning process. And that committee is comprised of school board members, Chair Cheryl Burt, Ms. Dawn Page, Ms. Stephanie Rizzi, along with yours truly. But we also are so fortunate to have 5 citizen members that are representative of the real estate, along with the architectural and engineering industries. I want to, if I may, take a moment to convey my gratitude to the mayor for his support in providing us access to a staff person who has been invaluable, specifically Paul McClellan, who is representing city economic development and has really gone about his business in collaboration with us in a way that cannot adequately convey my gratitude to either to him or to you, to Mr. Mayor, for providing him access to us. So thank you for that. The spreadsheet that Eva just shared with you includes, for lack of better description, 3 different buckets. These are properties, including at the bottom of the list, that have been disposed of. Everyone is familiar with these properties. These are off our books at RPS, and some of them include some very exciting development here in town that we all have a lot of familiarity with. At the top of the list includes some properties that have been surplus, but may or may not have included yet a quitclaim deed. These include some rather high-profile properties, including some notable school properties that in the past garnered some, among other, a lot of community interest. And can everyone see that? I see the mayor leaning in. I know it's a bit small. And also some press attention. And then in the middle of the list is really the meat of what we are attempting to address at the Vacant Property Committee. I need to share that at a recent meeting, the group 2 months ago agreed that we would provide to the full school board a list of schools and our findings or observations relevant to how to proceed. Perhaps at the risk of getting into the weeds, these properties that you see there include largely former schools that are either vacant and or under programmed. We most recently, for example, met to discuss the property you see there, the old real school on Chamberlain. But in a few words or less, and at the risk of speaking out of order, I do believe that there is some consensus on the Vacant Property Committee that we can better utilize these different locations, and I can share with you in my capacity as chair that it's certainly my objective for us to collaborate with the city in a way where we turn over as much property as possible to prayerfully benefit from sale. Everyone on this call knows that proceeds of any sale go back to RPS, thanks to an ordinance a few years old now. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll stop there, and obviously would welcome any questions if there are any.
Mr. Young, can you real quick go over the top 4 properties? Wickham, 13 acres, Moore Street, Oak Grove. What are those? Because unlike the other 2 that followed, the unprogrammed and vacant properties, disposed properties, there's really no title there. So can you explain those again?
Yes, absolutely, and thank you. I'm going to start at the bottom. The Oak Grove property, and I saw my colleague Miss Page want to weigh in, so I'm going to defer to her in that regard. But I will share that in our conversations with including, for example, the aforementioned Paul McClellan, that property is in a lot of folks' opinion, ripe for development for specifically single family. But I do want to defer to Ms. Page. The Moore Street School, the school board of the city of Richmond did vote to surplus that property. For folks that may be a little less familiar, this is the building that adjoins Carver. I've seen the commercials. And this building has been site of some speculation for a couple of years, but the school board did surplus the property. 13 acres. Again, for folks that may not be familiar, this is on the property at Linwood Holton, and it's includes a rather large grand old house that has fallen into disrepair. Again, there is some speculation relevant to if, for example, that property would eventually be subdivided, for example, to include perhaps single family, and then the same there Whitcomb property that has been surplus. But Mr. Mayor, I know my colleague Ms. Page would love to weigh in on the Oak Grove school property.
Go ahead, Ms. Page.
Yes, thank you. So just to excuse me, just to engage everyone. So if you remember, the Oak Grove property, the old Oak Grove building was surplus in 2012, and we did a quick claim deed in 2017. So at this point, that building is on the city books. So I suggest that this is an opportunity for the city to have a conversation with the community as far as, you know, what's the desires for the use of the purpose of their building. Because it's no longer on our books. So it's really not a discussion for the school board because we have already done a quick claim deed with the city.
Yeah, and Ms. Page, our economic development team is aware of this property in South Richmond, and we do plan on engaging the community in due time, very soon on this property for future development as well. We think there's some opportunities that for some benefits to be brought to the community with the use of this property. So it is something that we will be certainly taking a look at in a very short order.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Mr. Young?
Yes, sir. Obviously, most willing to entertain any other questions. Absent that, thank you for the opportunity to present a brief synopsis of what we've been working on.
Are there
Mr. Young, I have a question.
Any further questions for Mr. Young?
Yes, thank you. This is Catherine Jordan. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there anything in the works for Moore Street School? I recall hearing something from the Carver Association and Carver Elementary that they were interested and had some ideas around the Moore Street School.
Thank you for inquiring. A reference, we did surplus that building to be clear, but I will share that we have had conversations with Mr. McClellan as it relates to just what in RPS would be comfortable with for pertinent to uses at that facility. We met there as a group by the Vacant Property Committee before COVID, seemingly forever ago now, and had a discussion pertinent to what kind of uses would be familiar with. A new element, and perhaps my colleague and my colleague from the second would be willing to speak to what I'll share next. But a new element pertains to a proposal for a gym there in the parking lot. If for persons that are really familiar with the property, we're talking about kind of sandwiched in between. Sandwiched in between Carver and Moore Street, which is tucked away in the back. Part of the challenge with that building is that it's right up against some Dominion lines, against some towers, but nothing substantive, since what you are, I presume you're alluding to.
Okay, so there are no immediate plans for it.
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, is this Ms. Robertson?
this is Miss Robertson. How are you this evening?
I'm
How
well.
are all of you all? Good seeing you guys, ladies and gentlemen. My question is in regards to Wickham School. I would like some clarity on that. And then maybe I need some clarification as well, as once these properties are deeded back to the city, if there is additional obligation and commitment on behalf of the city to schools.
Madam, Mr. Mayor, I'll take my first stab at it, though admittedly it's a little biased, perhaps. I would I welcome the question, and we are or at least this school board member, let me not speak for anyone else, is most pleased that we have ordinance on the books that does provide for proceeds from the sale of said properties to come back to RPS and to infuse those dollars prayerfully into our capital budget. Beyond that, we at RPS just intend to be good partners, be good members of the community, and to the extent that that we can provide the city with recommendations relevant to what at RPS we are comfortable with, relevant to uses in near proximity. When, for example, Moore Street butts one of our buildings, 13 acres, et cetera. I think that would perhaps partly address your inquiry.
So just for clarification, I have a two-part question. And so I am correct in the fact that the Wickham School the deed has been transferred back to the city. That's correct?
It says deed provided by school board here in the city notes on the spreadsheet. We'll have to obviously double check, but I believe that's.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking the question, because if I understood you correctly, Mr. Young, in your opening statement, you said that these properties were deeded, but there may be some question as to whether or not the deed has been completely cleaned or not. Did I understand you correctly?
There is at least one property on the list that I am aware of that we surplused. And the quitclaim deed largely just needs to be handed over from one organization to another, one part of the city to another.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Young?
School board member Young, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Hey, so I mean, I'm seeing, as we have talked about last year when the mayor requested to have this vacant school committee stood up, great opportunity for us, obviously, to generate some new revenue and ongoing revenue for RPS. Being that we're going to be under some budget constraints this year and into the coming year, and there's certainly expenses we're being asked to carry ongoing, and we have so many needs in our budget. Do we have, I mean, would it be reasonable to say by the end of next year, at least for next budget year, we could see some of these, some, if not all, of the available properties into a position, those that are eligible for sale that aren't going to be used for community uses, to see those, you know, to see us execute on the sale of these parcels? I guess that's a question for both. I guess that's an everyone question.
Well,
That's an all of us question.
I think it is, Ms. Lynch, but at the risk of being put in position to speak for my 8 colleagues, I'll just speak in my capacity as chair of Vacant Property Committee. Absolutely. In fact, it's referenced our commitment at the Vacant Property Committee by April 1 to submit findings to the full school board relevant to if we are going to dispose of these properties or not. We, for example, just this past month met to discuss the real school up on Chamberlain. It's immediately across from about a 0.8 acre. The lot that we have is about an acre, more than an acre. Just across the street from it, just sold for something like $1.3 million. So yes, we are most interested in the opportunity to realize on sale of this inventory, and in lieu of going back to the taxpayer and asking for yet additional resources, leveraging these sites for the purpose of our kids and our teachers. At the risk of pointing out what should be obvious, there's some significant inventory in this portfolio here, and including a couple of properties that I'm confident would be most valuable to developers. But yes, we are not naive to it is a process, and we want to work hand in glove with the city to do what's best interest of RPS, of course, but also the community.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, just to sum, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, it looks like you wanted to.
No, please go ahead, Ms. Lynch.
Just so I'm capturing that correctly, it sounds, so the committee has set a goal of April 1st for this.
Right.
Would that be that would be the final transfer of some of these parcels, or would that be the sale of some of these parcels?
So that would be to submit our observations or findings to the full school board, with the intent then for my colleagues and I to then to make a decision soon thereafter if we were to surplus the property back to the city. At that point, then it would be in your lap, if I may.
That's excellent. We have lofty goals, but I think that's you know, as you all know, that's something that we're keeping on. Chair Burke and I are keeping that on the running agenda for the Ed and Human Services Committee, and you have my commitment. Well, I think speak at least for myself, saying that is a top priority to get these, to get to see this revenue come in for the RPS budget. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
No, I think that we all share the notion that we should move as expeditiously as possible to ensure that we can pump dollars back into RPS and into other vital services as well. Obviously, there's a process to everything we do, and so we don't want this to be sitting on a docket somewhere. We want to keep things moving, whether it's on the school board side, on the city council side, or on the administration side.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Robertson.
could I offer suggestion requests to the school board as well?
You may.
Perhaps that we could look at a way collectively that we could have some of the city as well, city council members, as well as maybe some of our economic development staff that is going to be a part of this initiative to look at some redevelopment in the city of Richmond, to sit at the table and maybe work through, not regarding schools that, I'm only speaking of the vacant properties that are not programmed at the present time. Once they've made a decision that they're not going to reprogram those schools, where we can really talk through some strategic strategies for the process of surplusing, but more specifically, the redevelopment strategy and the roles that we'll play in jointly in that process of looking at how we can move that with some idea that we can put together a time schedule, if you will. Would like to just offer that as a suggestion to be considered, both by the council and Mr. Mayor, your office, and school board, and the superintendent.
Well, what I do know, Ms. Robertson, that the administration, and as Mr. Young cited, that Mr. McClellan with the Economic Development Department is already working with the school board. However, it does sound like you are offering your in collaboration on this topic as well, to ensure that when it lands in the city council's lap, that you all do your part to expedite that process and get these properties into the marketplace, correct?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I'm doing more than that. I'm hoping that we can be involved long before it hits our desk.
Okay, good.
We're accustomed to that, but we'd like to do a little bit more than that. Thank you.
As long as it keeps on moving, that's the priority of I think of the administration, and whether it's between the city council and the school board. Obviously, we want all of us working together to make sure we keep this thing moving. And I mean, I look at some of these resolutions from RPS back from 2012, 2006, 2009, and as I look at the clock today, it's the calendar, it's Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. So I'm glad that Mr. Young is and his team over at RPS are doing everything they can to get this list right so we can take the next steps, and doing it in conjunction with the city council, I think will even make it even faster moving forward.
I concur.
Can I ask a question? This is Catherine Jordan again.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. Mr. Saunders, would any of these underprogrammed or vacant properties be appropriate for the group we're trying to move out of the public safety building rather than look at leasing space?
Councilwoman, I would say we have looked at some of these facilities, particularly Clark Springs. It's always kind of a balance of the maintenance and fixes we would need to make it an option. But Bob Seidel and the team have definitely looked at some of these options. And as I mentioned, Clark Springs was the one we really actually have looked at closely.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Young, thank you so much. I know that thank you for your update and your report, but also thank you for fielding the questions from the administration and also from members of the city council. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Now, we will now move on to the an update on our endeavor to build a new George Wythe High School, and who is Mr. Steidel, the DCAO of Operations, will give us an update there. Mr. Steidel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to all. As you all know, the Dreams for our RPS strategic plan had the 3 schools we've just completed in action item 5.8. And the strategic plan also then includes call to secure funding for George Wythe High School. And we're fortunate, you heard ACO Saunders talk about, I'm not going to get any more help. And we're going to hold on to the help we've got, but we still have the team together from the 3 school projects. And the team has been sitting on the 6th floor going through a lot of analysis of George Wythe High School. And we are ready to move forward with the RFP for design. I think that the Special Capital Projects Group, the procurement department will be able to come together pretty fast. and then be able to get that out on the street. We have about $7.3 million from prior year available to begin the design process. And I believe it is consensus of all that we can move forward at this time. We are going to use a prototype design based on River City. River City really is a high school. It is a middle school for the way it's programmed, but it is really the space and size of a high school. So that will be the beginning of our design. We own that prototype design, and that will make it easier as we move forward. And then, of course, we will continue to watch what is in the American Rescue Plan from the Biden administration as may be amended by the U.S. Senate before it's finalized. We'll certainly keep an eye on that and see if anything changes. Right now, ventilation costs are the only thing that's in that plan for schools, but that may change. And of course, we then expect the Biden administration's national infrastructure package to follow that up. So hopefully between the federal initiatives coming out for our nation as a whole, we'll be able to find a way to further accelerate what we're going to be able to design, and then of course build for Wythe. We've looked pretty hard at the site. We have a good way of making the current site work, and we're pretty excited about what we can be able to build there and replace that high school, which I don't think any of us want students attending any longer than is humanly possible. We want to get them into a new learning environment using technology of today to be able to support them in their education. Sir, that's a quick update. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
We have a question from Ms. Page. Ms. Page.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the update. We're very excited about that. So my question will be to the city, in collaboration with the school board, when do we expect to start having community meetings to engage the community in this process, you know, like with the design and so forth?
Ms. Page, if I may, and Mr. Seidel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that ball is in our court.
Right.
So, yes, so we will, the administration will bring to you and the board a timeline for that engagement process to begin so that we can get the design underway as soon as possible.
Thank you, because the community is very excited and I'm very excited as well. Thank you.
Whose district is George within?
It's in the
The
fifth,
fifth.
but it's one third of my alma mater.
I know, I'm just messing with you.
I share your excitement. We are really, really excited, aren't we, Don? We're
Yes,
and our
yes.
members are too.
Yes, and that's one of our feeder schools as well. The 8th district feeds into George Wythe, so yes.
Yep.
Any further questions for Mr. Steidel?
Do we, just a quick question on moving back to the community engagement piece. Is that going to be conducted by a city staff? Which shop within the city is going to be responsible for leading the community engagement? Is that going to be a third party? Is that going to be someone in the?
If I may, council member, I think that's going to be RPS. We decide what it is, the city builds it.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Steidel, for those updates. Really appreciate it. And thank you for your hard work. Next, we'll move to Chairwoman Lynch, the Chairwoman of the Education and Human Services Committee with the Richmond City Council. Chairwoman Lynch, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think we're really, really excited. We have a lot of energy behind the EHS committee this year. And, we're really taking a different approach and executing a different vision this year and really trying to look at the Ed and Human Services Committee as a supplement and a support to the functionality of the Education Compact Committee. And so in that way, we collaborate and work and walk alongside of our school board members, and specifically Chair Member Burke, and of course Superintendent Cameras. And so I said in the beginning that we did not want to overburden any of our RPS colleagues, but that we very much valued their input and their engagement and wanted them to be a part of this process. I wanted to kick it over to my ex officio co-chair, Chair Burke, who is really helping lead some of the discussions in the education portion of the Ed and Human Services Committee, and just kind of give us an idea of how for the rest of the year and kind of how we're working together. And I'm giving you this kind of update because it's something new that we're trying in the EHS committee, just to give you an idea of how we're kind of shaping out our vision, changing our approach this year. Chairman Burke.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here this evening. Serving on the Education and Human Services Committee has been delightful, I must say, because it's Councilwoman Lynch has established an atmosphere of a partnership, as the mayor stated earlier, that we are collaborating, we are working together on behalf of every child. So I appreciate that opportunity to just have that conversation with the other persons that are on the committee too, Councilwoman Robertson and Councilwoman Jordan, and of course our superintendent, Mr. Cameras. But it's been great. This past meeting on February the 4th, we discussed, of course, preparing for COVID. And I know the superintendent will give a discussion or a project, whatever, report, that's the word, report later on during this meeting. But we talked about how many employees have taken the COVID vaccine that we know of. It's been a long day, you all. I've been in meetings since early this morning. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Anyway, the vaccine, and right now we have about 40%, we believe, of our faculty and staff members who have been vaccinated. The challenge is that during the ice storms, we had opportunities to have persons to receive the vaccination, but the appointments were canceled. So we're catching up. We also talked at length, and Mr. Young has just done that beautifully in terms of how we're going to move forward regarding the vacant buildings. So we're going to discuss that again tomorrow as well to continue with that. And I'm glad that Jonathan shared that April 1, the committee just wants to make sure, as the mayor stated, it just doesn't roll over. This year, 2021, we're going to roll it over to the city and reap the benefits. And my last piece for that is, as you know, we are preparing to go back to school. So at the top of our agenda, thank goodness for the state funding, thank goodness for the ESSA funding, because we can make things happen that has been our dream for years. So I'm sorry the pandemic had to expose all the inequities, but the good part is that we will have children to return to schools that will be in much better shape than what the schools were when they left in March. And that pretty much concludes, Councilwoman Lynch.
She's amazing. Okay, how can I follow that? In any case, it you know, kind of connecting the systems of support that we have and taking that focal point of some of those, you know, really taking the opportunity to focus on some of those inequities and disparities that have been exposed and exacerbated by the pandemic, and life in a virtual learning environment is a key focus of ours, and kind of identifying those programs that are working working or not working for our students. One of the programs that we're exploring in Thursday's meeting, and if anyone wants to attend, you all are more than welcome, is our Newcomers and Ambassadors program, really looking at how has this pandemic and how has our virtual learning settings affected and impacted our English language learners in RPS, and how are these programs intervening and helping to target and support them. We're also going to look at some very, very good news, and that is our graduation rates. Proud to say that George Wythe is, and Superintendent Cameras came to our last meeting and kind of delved into our graduation rates. and proud to say George Wythe has made vast improvement. I think they were took the largest leap out of any of the schools in the district in regards to graduation rates. And that's really powerful information and data that that he shared with us. And I think Councilmember Robertson in that last meeting noted it, that this is information that's so great to get out there in the sunshine to the rest of the council members, to the rest of the city. You know, oftentimes there's all the good news that is shared in the confines of the school board meetings that sometimes we don't get to hear. And so allowing our superintendent a platform to share some of those highlights is going to be another key focus.
Excuse me, Councilwoman Lynch. Yes, George Wythe did superbly well, but so did Armstrong High School. So please don't leave the figure out.
You
So
see
did
what we got going
Armstrong
on
High
here, right?
School. That's right. Yes. I mean, just great gains. I'm so excited to see that data again. And also thank you to the ambassadors on the school system side as well as the city side for their partnership and making sure that our students are following through, knocking on the doors, getting the students up and making sure they're on task. So we appreciate that support from the city as well. But Armstrong, 7th District.
Bulldogs forever.
Just all love, all love.
We got a lot of school spirit going on in this committee.
That's right. That's right.
So our plan for community engagement and input, because it is so important, our committee did vote to solicit and create and solicit responses and feedback from the community based on what they wanted to see our EHS committee focus on. And with all of the priorities that we have in the Ed and Human Services portfolio, kind of narrowing those down and getting some community feedback on what those items will be. So we have a survey that has been drafted, and we hope to get that out later this month. That's going to go to it's going to be released publicly and go to a wide variety of stakeholders, and the committee can use that to help inform our work, as well as some of the priorities that have been set by council and school board jointly. So we are excited to delve in. We have a lot of work to do. And as Chair Burke mentioned, we have vacant committees or vacant properties on our running agenda. And that is something we absolutely want to focus on. And I thought Councilmember Robertson's suggestion was a great one, and look forward to working on all of those items and more in the coming year. So we'll have hopefully have an even meatier update for you next Education Compact meeting.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Any further questions for Ms. Lynch? Thank you, Ms. Lynch. And I think it was a great segue of our school spirit.
A question for
We segue over to Mr. Cameras and a report from Richmond Public Schools. We'll hand it over to you, Mr. Cameras.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Ms. White had a question.
Ms. White, you have a question?
yes.
Okay, we'll get you in here real quick.
Councilwoman Ms. Lynch, hi. My question is on your education and your health services. I'm seeing that the connecting the systems to support our students and families, and you were just, I think it was mentioned that the teachers, 40% of them were vaccinated. Is there anything in your program that is educating or connecting the families as far as on the vaccination, since the children are returning back to school? And we do know that the Black and brown families are a little leery of sending their children back to school with them out being vaccinated.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'd have to give a nod to our local Department of Health, which they have been doing the Lord's work and have been holding really targeted events, not only for our teachers, but have been doing a great job educating our families as well. They have went into several communities. I know in my district, I can speak in my district, where they have provided additional education, taking community health workers and health navigators into the community to answer questions about the various vaccines that are available, some of the facts that folks have asked for, so further information that folks have asked for. So I would have to turn, that really falls in their purview. We are, as the oversight body, we are keeping a very close eye on the metrics that we're looking for is how many teachers in the RPS system, staff, not just teachers. It's everyone from the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, to the folks educating our kids. And so, how well we're doing in meeting that metric, which so far we're doing real well. And I think we can all be proud of the work that RPS is been doing, and that's thanks to a lot of the work in the superintendent's office and the collaboration between the local Department of Health and RPS. And the second metric that we're looking at is how well we are doing in meeting the community where they are, and holding those events where we're targeting specific populations within the eligible vaccination categories. So, one thing that we're looking at next, because we've gotten a number of the senior complexes, senior apartment complexes, senior public housing complexes vaccinated, done vaccination events there, is kind of moving on to that 1B category, service workers, essential workers. And so that's a metric that we're looking at, is where are we within that vaccination category. So that's something that we can look at, and certainly that's a benchmark that this committee is holding as a measure of success. But I hear you on the anxieties that folks have. That's real, and it's something that our local Department of Health, and I think all of us, are working tirelessly on, and want to make sure that everyone has access to the vaccine and to the information.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Cameras, an update from Richmond Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think actually Mr. Stanley is going to do a quick state update, and then I'll wrap up.
Please.
Thank you, Superintendent Cameras. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, school board members, and everyone else. Very happy to give you a brief legislative advocacy update tonight. As I did with our school board last night, I first want to acknowledge and thank everyone who advocated during this year's General Assembly session. Our students, our teachers, our families, everyone. It is because of you that we did see ongoing significant investment again this year from the state. I also want to thank our legislators and our other advocacy partners like the VEA, the Fund Our Schools campaign, a lot of people involved during the legislative session to try to craft a public education budget that matches the needs of our students and our schools across the state. This past weekend, the General Assembly did finish their business, and they approved a conference budget report. The conference budget report almost makes up for all of the money that was unallotted due to the economic impacts of COVID-19 last spring. All the way back up to just under $4 million was all that they would have had to have done to get us back up to that exact same level. They did invest the money in this budget proposal in a few different things than the ways that they were spending their money last year. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. So a big chunk of the money that they have approved that will go into effect for the end of this current fiscal year is for COVID relief to remediate learning loss, as well as some additional funding for infrastructure and operations. That money will be available once the final budget is adopted in April at the General Assembly's reconvened session. And then that funding will be able to be carried over into future fiscal years. Now, the big news is going into the next fiscal year for FY22. The biggest news that you've all likely seen in the press is the approval of a 5% teacher raise over the biennium. So RPS did a 2% raise last year in the budget that was proposed by the school board a couple weeks ago. There was a 2% raise included in that budget. And last night, Superintendent Cameras indicated that the administration's proposal when the school board meets in May to revise an adopted budget is to increase that 2% raise for FY22 to a 3% raise so that we match the full 5% that the state is giving us. So that is the big news. There is some other money happening in FY22. There's about $30 million in additional remediation and recovery grants that the Department of Education will be distributing. We do expect that those will be tied in some way to possible extended school year calendars. And that will be an application-based process that would expect it to be competitive. The General Assembly also has finally approved one of the Virginia Board of Education's recommendations to amend the standards of quality, and that is the creation of a new category of support staff called specialized support staff that includes school nurses, psychologists, social workers, behavior analysts. We know that it will help especially school divisions like ours where we have students that do have more significant acute needs than students in wealthier divisions. And so that will significantly help us continue to invest in providing more of those critical specialized support staff positions to our students. The General Assembly finally funded lowering the counselor ratio to 1 to 325. This has been an issue that we have been following for a couple years now, a little bit of back and forth between the General Assembly and the governor. So that will finally be going into effect. And then I think a really important initiative that the General Assembly passed this year was providing an additional year of high school for exceptional education or students with disabilities that are older, 19 or older, and it will provide them an extra year of high school education. And then, of course, I'll end with an issue that I know is very important with the discussions between the City Council and School Board, and that is childcare. And I know we've reported before on expansion of the childcare subsidy program. That is going to be expanded again, another $62 million and expanded eligibility for families to receive subsidies to receive childcare at the provider of their choice. There is also a restoration of some of the BPI funding. Last year, it was cut by about 10%, and that has now been restored back. And then finally, thinking about the future of our early childhood education workforce, there is a $5 million program that creates a recruitment program for early childhood educators. And I know that that's been a huge initiative, I think, especially advocated for by Delegate McQuinn in the House. So at this point, we will be looking for any amendments that the governor might propose to the budget in the coming weeks. So he has about 30 days to prepare those amendments. And then, as I said, in early April, the General Assembly will reconvene and will act on a final budget. This is all, the wild card with all of this is obviously federal stimulus, as has mentioned already tonight. We do expect that in Washington, D.C., there will be further action happening. That will, once a stimulus package is funded, the General Assembly actually put language in the budget that requires their approval of any further state appropriation of those funds. So the General Assembly will have to likely come back into another special session at some point this year to decide how to spend any further general state stimulus money that we receive. We do expect that there will be specific set-asides for K-12 education, but we know that the state will also receive a lot more money as well. So with that, that completes my report for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions on the call tonight.
Any questions for Mr. Stanley? Seeing none, Mr. Cameras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start off with some great news. I would like to share some data about our projected graduation rates. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to the board and the council and to you, Mr. Mayor. The investments that everybody on this call have made over the last 3 years are beginning to pay off. And I know folks have been incredibly gracious in terms of the revenue, and we're grateful for that. But I know they also, myself included, want to see a return on investment. And so what I have for you tonight is a return on investment. And I hope it inspires confidence for even more over the coming year. So I'm going to share my screen. If Matthew or whoever is, I guess I can overtake whatever is showing right now. There you go. Can you see the graduation deck? Beautiful. It's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to cut straight to the point. We have been working around the clock for several years now to get our house in order in terms of graduation. We've launched a number of new programs, our Secondary Success Center, to help bring folks back who have dropped out. Our Con Ganas program, which is focused on our overage undercredited English learners, and our Newcomer Academy, which is for recent immigrants to the country. None of those programs would have been possible without the investments that the school board, the council, the mayor have made. So I want to again thank you for those investments. And so here's what's happening because of them and because of the hard work of our teachers and principals and counselors. Here is the projected data for the dropout rates for 2020-21, the current school year. As you can see, last year we were at 23.2%, and this year we are projecting 10.1%. Obviously, we want that at 0, but we're projecting about a 13% drop in our dropout rate. Even if our projection is a little bit off and it comes in at a 10% reduction, that is a monumental achievement. And I want to recognize Armstrong, down almost 8%, George Wythe down 25%, Huguenot down 18%, John Marshall down 5%, and TJ down almost 1%. So truly incredible numbers amidst a pandemic, no less. And by subgroup, if you look at it, all across the board, we are down. Particularly proud of the number for our Black and African American students, our Hispanic and Latino students, our students with disabilities down 13%, and our English learners down 35%. And let me then take you just to dropout recovery. So that's preventing dropouts. And then we've actually re-enrolled 71 seniors this year. 21 at Armstrong, 27 at Wythe, 11 at Huguenot, 8 at Marshall, 1 apiece at Open and Community, and 2 at TJ. These are young people who we have located and then encouraged to come back and then supported so that they can get across the stage this year. So huge thanks to everyone involved in that. And then let's just cut to the chase, go to the projected graduation rates. Now, again, these are projections, so we won't know for sure until the end of the year and we get our summer graduates in, but we are projecting that we will go from 71.6% last year to about 85% this year, an increase of 13.6%. Again, even if it's just up 10% and we're shy of that 13%, that is a monumental increase. Again, we have Armstrong up almost 8 points, Wythe up nearly 20, Huguenot up nearly 20, JM up. Don't worry about Open. That's just one student that has an alternative plan. But again, huge increases. And then if you look at it again by subgroup, all across the board increases. So again, thank you to the city and the board for the investments and for the confidence in the strategic plan. I believe in the plan. I know you do as well. And I think if we can just stay the course and keep investing in it, these are the kinds of outcomes that we are going to get for the children here in Richmond. Let me just say a few words about where we are right now and where we're headed. The board last night approved a limited reopening plan for about 800 students this spring. That will occur starting April 12th, right after spring break. We are focusing primarily on our highest need students, elementary kids with IEPs and English learners, and those with the most significant needs in those categories. We're also going to provide in-person instructional support at our facilitated learning centers to, in essence, convert the experience for those children from more of a facilitated learning to a learning experience. And so all told, we think we'll have the opportunity to provide in-person support for about 800 kids. So very excited about that. And now we turn our attention squarely to next year. We are, of course, already planning for that. One of the things that we are considering is a new calendar. You can call it year-round, extended year, blended year, whatever you want to call it. But basically, it would have 7 additional weeks of instruction for 5,000 of our highest need students. Those additional weeks would be spread out over the course of the year, 3 right before school starts, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring. They would be optional, but highly encouraged for our highest needs students, and they would be optional for our teachers. Any teachers who do choose to work the extra weeks, though, would earn $10,000 in additional pay over the course of the year. I have not been shy about my excitement and support for this proposal. I know there are strong feelings on all sides of this. I respect positions on all sides of this. Our survey data, which full disclaimer is not a scientific survey. It is based on who responds. It's the same approach we've taken in the past when we asked about reopening in the winter. But based on that data, with over 2,000 families responding, more families are sharing that they are comfortable with this calendar than not comfortable. And more teachers are sharing that they are comfortable with this than not comfortable. Not a majority, but a plurality. And I think that's noteworthy. We are going to continue to gather data, hold town halls over the next 2 weeks, keep the survey open. We encourage everyone, teacher, staff member, family member, to weigh in, and the board will make a decision on March 15th. And then we will proceed in earnest, getting ready for the new year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cameras. And Mr. Cameras, I want you to know that I also share your excitement for the extended calendar, blended calendar, full, year-round school model. I share your excitement because I recognize, and I've also heard from members of our community when we walk in our neighborhoods. I've walked in all the neighborhoods of in public housing and other communities as well, and we all recognize that our children are learning right now remotely, but there are some who are having a tougher time learning remotely, learning virtually. And I think they deserve every opportunity that we can offer them to catch up and be successful, not just in the current school year, but the upcoming school years as well. And so when you stress and emphasize the word optional, it's my hope that those out there in the public and those who are employees of RPS remember that word, that it's optional. But I hope, pray that our parents take full advantage of this option to ensure that their children have every access to success that RPS is offering right now. So it's my hope that you continue with the public engagement on this front, but I also know that our children need this right now. And thank you for doing the tough work to create this proposal. And it's my hope that we can pick something, select something that will allow for our kids to catch up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cameras?
I have a question.
Ms. Lynch.
Thank you, Superintendent Cameras, and thanks, Mr. Mayor. As a parent, I am a huge supporter of the 10-month calendar as well. I had a third grader. The pandemic hit in the middle of the third grade, and that's of course such a critical year as kids go from learning to read to reading to learn. So I've seen his cohort and so many struggle as we've gone into fourth grade, and we really need this as a mitigation strategy to help with learning loss. And as a social worker, happy Social Worker Month, by the way, seeing so many of our clients who are also struggling, who may have co-occurring mental health issues that they're dealing with and other challenges. I think getting our students back in person and getting, so I can commend you for that strategy for the 500 kids who are our highest need kids getting back and having an opportunity to help in the future calendar year catch some of our other kids up. It's really appreciated. My question is VDOE planning to, have we caught any wind of VDOE planning to release any guidance for localities? Do we see any future funding streams attached with some of the millions of dollars that are coming their way soon? And how does that relate to our plans for the 21-22 school year?
Thank you, Councilmember Lynch. First, let me just say thank you for including me and Mrs. Burke in your committee meetings. As Mrs. Burke said, it's such a positive and collaborative environment, and I think we have another one tomorrow or sometime this week. So I'm excited to
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay. But no, we really do appreciate it. And I think the more we have those lines of communication open, the better off we all are. So thank you. As for your question, as it happens, we actually just met with Dr. Lane and President Gecker earlier today. Dr. Lane spoke, I think it's fair to say, rather effusively about our calendar proposal, and said that there are state dollars that are and will be available. In fact, said that he would be open to even waiving some of the time requirements on some of those things to get RPS some of those funds. So I think we have VDOE fully at our backs supporting us on this, which is another reason why I think it's a real opportunity for us.
Any other questions for Mr. Cameras? Okay, thank you, Mr. Cameras. And also thank you to RPS. Those were some impressive numbers on graduation rate. I think I've stated in the past that we should be judging, we should be assessing our children on their growth. And you're seeing a lot of growth out of RPS and its students, as stated by Mr. Cameras and shown those statistics as well. And I think that should be applauded. So we are seeing a return on investment, but doesn't mean take our foot off the gas. We got to continue to invest. Mr. Cameras, you have anything else, or?
That's it.
Sounds like you went over this slide here already. So,
yes, sir.
Does anyone else have anything else for good of the order?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Dr. Newbill.
Yes, just briefly. First, I want to congratulate Mr. Cameras on your contract renewal. I absolutely look forward to our continued collaborative work together, along with Ms. Burke and the full school board, to fully implement the Dreams for RPS strategic plan to ensure that all 24,000 of our children have opportunity for a stellar educational experience. Just want to say that. I want to thank you and the school board for the funding of the child care entities, and look forward to those continued efforts. I certainly, in terms of the prior conversation, just want to acknowledge our leadership in terms of the city council infrastructure with Ms. Lynch, Ms. Jordan, and Ms. Robertson, as we move forward, being the major connective tissue back to city council in terms of ongoing efforts and initiatives, whether we're dealing with surplus property and what is happening there, or economic development, or moving from virtual to in person, and on and on. I just want to say that we are And I am absolutely pleased and thrilled with the accomplishments that you've shared. Look forward to the continued work together collaboratively. And our education committee, as Ms. Lynch has shared and certainly stepped forward in terms of probably the most significant engagement at this point with schools, and look forward to our ongoing work and efforts together. I just wanted to say thank you, not just briefly. I think that was as brief as I can make it without going and, just cheering for all of the accomplishments that you've shared in terms of our kids and, resources coming to bear. But just want to acknowledge, thank, and appreciate your work and efforts, the school board, and certainly our Education and Human Services Committee with the members who are on this evening, as well as the administration. And look forward to, again, our collaborative efforts on behalf of all 24,000 of our children.
Thank you, Dr. Newbell. And that's a good brief right there. We like that type of brief because there's a lot of good stuff in it. So we love it. Mr. Cameron, if you want to say anything?
I did, if I may. Thank you so much, Dr. Newbill. And I want to convey how grateful we are to you for your leadership. Cannot imagine a better president of the council, and your commitment to RPS has been unmatched. And I am equally excited to continue to work with you and the council over the next 4 years and beyond to make those dreams come true. And I know that's what we're all united around. So thank you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our agenda. I thank everyone for joining us tonight. Those at home who watched this evening, thank you for joining us tonight. I want to thank members of the school board, members of the city council for their continued contributions to ensure that we create the best outcomes for each and every child. Everyone have a good and safe evening. Take care.